learning. In fact, considering recent trends in health orders, most of California is moving in the wrong direction. How can we reasonably expect hundreds of or thousands of students and employees to come together on one campus in a phase 3 or phase 4 without putting these safety measures in place? Federal and state guidance regarding a phased reopening have consistently focused on a sustained flat or downward trajectory of county COVID-19 cases for 14 consecutive days. The district's own return to school committee has recommended a flat or downward period of 28 consecutive days. San Mateo County cases, for example, have increased every day since March 4th. Yet yesterday on July 13th, the county set a record of 111 new cases reported. From a public health perspective, the best course of action would be to focus our efforts on improving our ability to provide the robust quality distance learning that we know we are capable of, taking this measured, responsible approach that will allow us to plan the best possible implementation for the next phase. Educators must continue to be part of the conversations, planning, and decisions that directly impact their students, including how and when schools physically reopen in the next phases. We too want to be back with our students doing the work that we love, but we cannot and will not ignore science, facts, and safety. In the present environment, we only have one real option that truly ensures flexibility, responsibility, and accountability. Start the new school year under robust distance learning protocols until the virus is contained and proper safety measures can be put in place. Make no mistake, we're not suggesting that we must wait for a vaccine. We're simply talking about effectively containing and putting measures in place that will safely ensure the well-being of our students. We look forward to working collaboratively and urge the board to proceed slowly so that this collaboration can happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. I've noticed we've gone over our 500, so Zoom might not allow some of you to stay in. If that's the case, you can join us on our YouTube channel. We got it up and running a few minutes after, right at the beginning of Craig's talk. So it's running now, and if you're having trouble with Zoom, I encourage you to go to the YouTube channel. Regular reports, do we have, I'm gonna ask, do we have anyone from the CSEA who wishes to make a report? Ms. Chalkley, we've reached out and I gather no one wishes to make a report that we're aware of. See, no one, I see no one asking to make a report from CSEA or the Adult School Teachers Association.
That's correct as far as I know, Mr. Friedman.
Okay, I'm just giving them one last chance to let you know if they wish to make a comment. Seeing none, we're gonna move on from regular reports to the first item of the agenda, item L1, reopening plan for 2021. Dr. Skelly, someone will need to share their screen with the reopening plan. I would suggest Ms. Kempke, because she's the one who's able to do this usually effectively technologically. It's all yours, Dr. Skelly.
Thank you.
At this time, requests to make comments are closed on this item.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're ready to get started here. So for those of you tuning in, just to go back a little bit, on June 11th, we had a board meeting in which we received some direction from the board. In response to that, we came back to the board on June 25th with another report, and then a meeting was scheduled for today in which we are going to share further our thoughts on reopening. This is, we're always looking for direction from the board. Today's meeting was not scheduled. It was originally going to be we'd had no meetings in June, so this isn't a study session per se, but it is an opportunity for somewhat a less formal structure than we might have at a regular board meeting. We are struggling to do this work. We're aware of the number of days left before school starts, and we have We're also aware of the health trends with respect to cases in the county. And so we're aware that we may, that this plan is subject to change at all times. We are hoping, and we've got it on the agenda later, to have a board meeting on July 30th at 1 o'clock that would continue this work. We think the opportunity to come, bring you ideas, bring you thoughts about the reopening, and then get feedback from you and the public, the board and the public, and then go forward is the way to go as we go forward. I'd like to thank all those people who've been involved in the work at the site and the district. We hope that you see that work, and we deeply appreciate people who are working at this time as we go forward. And we're also eager to get feedback. Let's see. Let's go to the next slide. The next slide goes through the agenda for our meeting. Okay, thank you. First, we'll talk about phases and phase monitoring. You asked for more at the last meeting, and so we have some information there. The learning schedule we'll review. We'll look at the 2 major programs for choices for families. Some information about coursework outside of the district, some of the changes in our policies here. A questionnaire for families so we can get some direction as we go forward. Communication, physical education, and various other topics as we plan. Next slide. The next slide describes the fall semester phases. You can see these here. At the last board meeting, board direction was to start in phase 2 with synchronous online learning for almost all of our programs and classes that we would have. That also, the direction was that we have campuses open for study sessions, that we pay particular attention and look at our ELD students, our English language development students, students who have an IEP, physical education, grade orientations, using outdoor spaces for part of the day. We were asked to put in some more description about the phase 3, phase 4, and phase 5. That information is contained here. We still believe that we need to get into the school year before we know what cohort should be brought back and in what form. Certainly looking at the data at present, we do not see moving to a 3rd phase clearly before October, and it may be significantly later than that, but we would look at what cohorts would be on campus. Just to repeat, our thought is that if any students are in buildings before the first 6 weeks or as part of phase 2, that seems highly unlikely. We are blessed with a great climate here and the opportunity to do some things outside, as well as particularly needy kids. So we think there's some possibilities to do things there. If you go to the next slide here about phase monitoring, we've been asked repeatedly about, what would it take to move from a different phase here. We're looking at these cases, the number of cases, schools, county, region, and nationwide, testing rates, hospitalization rates. Those are all key things. And we do know some things about what would work or what might work. And by taking a look at other countries that have opened schools to some extent. And as we look at those things, we see that we have a long ways to go in terms of having younger kids back first, seeing a reduction in the number of cases. And then we do think we have a strong plan to implement social distancing and face coverings, but testing is still something that we have a ways to go. So if you look at the next slide, our thoughts on reopening, we still believe that place to start is phase 2 with online synchronous learning for all students. We do think it's important to have outdoor study centers for students who do not have home environments that are conducive to online learning, and some other students that we'll describe here later. Our ELD teachers, our special ed teachers, and our physical education teachers have been engaged in discussions about how to teach online classes. And also we've had some conversations with Performing Arts Department as well, but nothing is in this report today. We think these are classes that could be done outdoors, but we know that there are lots more conversations to be had with teachers and other folks on that topic. And we plan to come back to you on the July 30th meeting to discuss these topics further. We are looking forward to having some orientation. This school year is going to be a year that's different for every student in our district. And so some sort of orientation process needs to take place. And once again, that will be outdoors. At the last board meeting, there was some discussion about moving from phase to phase. That was 16 days ago, and that was a lot, or maybe it was 19 days ago. There's a lot that's changed in those 19 days. We're certainly, there was perhaps no decision made, but we're looking for the board to be very clear that we're going to stay in phase 2 for at least 6 weeks. And that puts us to the end of September before we would revisit that. And then the board would be involved in discussions at your September meetings and at your August meetings to give us further direction as we move forward. The next few slides were covered in the previous presentation. I'm not going to spend very much time on this, but what you see here is a robust schedule for learning that has considerable time for classes. It's very close to what we had in last year before the pandemic. We think it's a strong program that provides both opportunities for students to dig into curricular matter, as well as receive the support that they need, and to give teachers time to meet as groups and plan lessons. If you go to the slide 9, well, 2 more slides. Now I'd like to talk a little bit about the academic programs that we'll be offering. We know that the majority of our students will be in choice 1, which is synchronous learning. Go to the next slide. And this slide is what we describe with the instructional schedule. Students learning virtually with their teachers in live classes via Canvas conferencing and other synchronous learning tools following the instructional schedule that I just went through in a hurry. Phase 2 would allow some small groups of students to learn in person outside classroom setting. All classes would be taught by a teacher credentialed in the subject matter. Teachers would use Canvas LMS to lead classes, and then have integrated subject-specific tools to engage in engagement and differentiation. This would be 7 classes students could take and about 185 minutes of instruction. And then students will also have some of the support classes that we have traditionally run, directed studies, guided studies, and the like as part of their instruction. If you look at the other choice, we know that there are families who will choose, excuse me, to do an independent study with asynchronous instruction, and that's on students' own pace and independent of other students. This choice allows students to have some flexibility in their day, and they might be able to use that to support siblings or other members of their family, or they just might prefer that. The district will use the Edgenuity platform that we chose several years ago for other online learning after looking at a variety of different options that were available. We looked at various vendors who do this kind of work with school districts, and this was our choice. You can see that the classes are linked in this presentation, and there are a whole bunch of areas that students can take, including AP classes. These classes will be supported and facilitated by district teachers, and they'll have regular office hours. And if it's possible, we'll do those by school, but that might not be possible. Slide 12. There's the last board meeting, the board asked for information and recommendations about students and families who might choose to take coursework outside of the district. We would allow students to take classes, and we've done this in the past, but generally for remediation. Community college classes, this is something that we have been promoting vigorously in the district, and we will continue to do that. And then for WASC accredited high schools such as UC Scout, BYU, and others, that's a decision that we're certainly making for this year, and we'll examine how it goes going forward. These classes can be taken for district credit and will count towards graduation. These will appear, they'll follow the same administrative regulation that they always have. And then these will appear on the transcript as out-of-district transfer courses. And we really do want to make sure that families that choose this would go through their counselors to make sure that these classes are WASC accredited, that they meet the requirements of this. And we don't think this is a problem, but we do think it's super important that counselors are involved in this so that they can support students and families in their process. I did receive a question about whether these courses would count towards athletic eligibility. That's athletic eligibility athletics is a slide that we'll have later. We anticipate those classes would count, but they wouldn't have progress reports associated with those classes. In other words, you need to, whatever the grade was at the semester would be the grade that goes forward. And I think that's something that we can work on, but in general, they would certainly count towards the 20 units that a student is required to be passing in order to participate in athletics. And athletics may be very different here. And then the final note here is that courses taken outside of the district will not have a teacher assigned to their families. And families will need to submit transcripts to be awarded credit. We've had some problems in the past where families who've chosen this have not, kids have not actually finished the coursework. So and then where do they go next? What class should they take? Those sorts of things. So we're really interested in maintaining strong communication with families on that topic. The next comment was also brought up at the board meeting. And then I wanted to bring that up, and that's a grade point average increase. This is how the district handles it. Students will and families will follow the appropriate processes to make sure they appear on the transcript. And then these classes that are taken at the college level and WASC accredited institutions, that those would receive the GPA increase on our scales. Now, obviously the state and every institution or state, the UCs and other colleges deal with grade point averages in their own ways, but that will be the way that we plan to handle that in the fall. The next slide is an important slide here. We need to get information from our families in order to update the staffing that we have we've already planned for this year. We need to know whether families will be choosing synchronous online learning or whether they'll be doing independent study. We need to talk a little bit about how they would like to handle physical education. We need to know whether they need Chromebooks or Wi-Fi access. And we also need to share information about nutritional services and mental health services. These are important topics. We have a survey drafted. We want to send that out in the next couple of days because that information is so important as we build the kind of instructional program for families that we need here. Go to the next slide. In terms of communication, we are working hard to get as much information out as we possibly can. I think having board meetings during this time is indispensable, but we're trying to send out emails every week to staff as we work through these topics. We've had one town hall meeting with Burlingame High School PTO. Others are in the works. I was in communication with about our Spanish speaking meeting, and that looks like it will be the last week in July, and hopefully before the July 30th board meeting, so we can talk a little bit about that. And then we'll also be discussing that with our various schools as we go forward. Let's see. What else can I say here? And then obviously we'd like to have that board meeting at the end of July. The next slide, now we start getting into some of the specific areas and subject areas here. The physical education department and the department chairs have been meeting on this, and they believe that they have a super important role to play in terms of connections with students. The chance to exercise is so beneficial for students' mental health and has the least amount of risk. All studies point to being outside as being the safest place possible to be. It also provides students with a routine, a chance to meet with teachers and other staff to check in person. And so we believe that if there are some students who are on campus for PE, then if there are counselors that need to meet with them outside in a controlled atmosphere, or they need to get individual support or counseling or mental health or health directives, that this offers a great opportunity for us to be in touch with students, and the PE teachers agree. There are significant challenges that are associated with physical education. Transportation is one, but we believe that students should be able to if that's something that they want to do and their family wants to do, that should be open to them. We do think that there may be occasions where those students need to stay an additional period on campus or until lunch when they could go back. And so I think that's a piece that we're working on with sites. Our sites realize that they need to have places on campus where students can study and attend classes synchronously for one period around the PE classes. And this is an important piece for our families that I think is really something that we need to think about. The internet connections that folks have are not always the most robust. Simon Bettis and his staff are working on making our campuses and the ability to be on campus and access the internet is really important, because not all of our students are going to be in situations at home where they can where they have a private space that they can do their work. And we think we have the ability to support families, and this could also be helpful for students and families who choose to have the experience of being on campus to do PE with masks, social distancing, and all the other pieces that go there. And then we also know that as part of our survey that we're going to have to make sure that students who choose not to attend in person have their own sections. So as we start looking at this, we would start with smaller cohorts, not necessarily on the first day, but that we would start and increase as possible. We think that the smaller classes have a chance to orient our students to school, and also provide those freshmen and sophomores who are in PE class to get extra time on those things so that they can get accustomed to the culture of the school as well. These classes would be held outside. They would modify according to the master schedule, weather, and facilities. Those would be calls that the schools would make. And the teachers would have class through distance learning if there's inclement weather in August through November, and the teachers in schools and individual departments would make that going forward. So I imagine there'll be some questions on this, and there's certainly more details that we need to work through. In terms of special education, those are some of our most vulnerable students. We want to support those as much as possible. In my conversations with Dr. Wade, our new special education director, as well as other special ed staff, there's, like all of our teachers, there's a deep commitment to providing student services and do as well as we possibly can for these students, and continuing those partnerships with our families. That we will work on exploring solutions, distance learning and on-campus learning opportunities. And there'll be a committee that's going to work through that work. And I know that Dr. Wade and some of our department chairs have already started those conversations and that work. We want to provide folks with the highest levels of online experiences that we possibly can. We have IEP deadlines and those and timelines and assessments that we need to do, and we'll be working with families there and monitoring the social, emotional well-being of our students, because many of the special ed identified needs are around the areas of mental health. So you see some more, individualized work that needs to go on here, and we'll be flexible, remain curious and collaborative in our efforts to bring students back in a safe manner. These slides are the product of the special ed department's work here, and I'm the deliverer of that message. Orientation is the next slide. Those things are continuing to be worked through. We have lots of work to do in terms of distributing materials as we go forward. The orientation will include freshmen and new students, but certainly this is a new era for all of our students. And so all students need to be involved in that work. And so, the sites are working hard on this topic. This will not be easy in and of itself, but it's crucial for us to, if we're going to get online synchronous learning ramped up as well as we can. English learners, we have a task force that's being created that will work on this. We also need to look at other classroom times that would work for students late in the afternoon, early evening. Some of the results that in just informal polls about bridge students and others, there's a real interest in engaging in the learning process and having support that students need. We also have ELD instructional aides, and those are folks that can check in and support those students, as well as our family engagement coordinators. This is a high priority for the district, and supporting these students is really important. The next slide touches on athletics. We are somewhat in a holding mode here. The CIF will meet on July 20th to give direction to regional sections. We do want to have sports in the fall if that's something that we can do. We think that that's really an important aspect of student life, and it's also really important for student well-being. And we know that students who are in season do better in school. And so this is an important indicator of students' success as they go forward. We're looking at football and water polo. Those do not appear to be fall sports. We would like to offer swimming and potentially even badminton in the fall, if that's possible under the health conditions. Those have been spring sports. And once again, badminton may be tough, but we do have a big space there and you could have limited students in there. We are working with the Central Coast section and the Pacific Athletic League on these issues. They won't be easy either, but we have really dedicated athletic directors and we have students who are hungry for this activity. I received a report that we have over 800 students who are involved in conditioning over the summer outside in small cohorts and engaged in that experience. And some those activities, even if they're once or twice a week, have been really important for students during this time when many of them don't have other opportunities to meet with their friends or engage in physical activities in an organized manner. The next slide is an update both on our program at Middle College.
Dr. Skelly, can we just stop here? We'll come
Sure.
back. Just for board, I should have, when I introduced the item, I should have said this. I broke the item into 4 different aspects.
Thank you,
so
yes.
We would talk about comprehensive, then come back and talk about middle college, then come back and talk about adult school, and then come back and talk about Peninsula, because those other 3 have different models. So I wanted to focus things that way. Is that okay then? If you want
I
to
just
wrap,
got talking and I stopped and I didn't shut up. So
if you want to wrap up your comprehensive, or I can.
Yeah, thank you. I think I've said enough. So we'll go on to.
Sure.
So you can stop sharing your screen, but be prepared to put up a slide if we do, and I'll let you know. Thank you.
Thank you. So the process is, and I apologize for not introducing it fully when the item started. Next, board members can ask clarifying questions. After the board members ask clarifying questions, we have about 8 or 9 public comments, and they've all been promoted already, and I'll give you the order you're going to speak when we get there. Each speaker will have 3 minutes, and then board members will come back and talk about this. Then we'll move on to middle college, adult school, and Peninsula. So do any board members have a clarifying question? I have one too. Greg. Mr.
So
Lamb.
I have a couple. So first, I want to know about the metrics. Earlier on, we talked about moving from phase to phase. I want to know a little bit more about how that's going to work and what metrics are we going to use. Another question I have is on ingenuity. Is that something that we're stuck with? Is that something that we can change? Because in the second slide, it talks about UC Scout and BYU. I'm wondering if there's a way to shift, or why are we doing it, or why are we not doing it? I was going to also have a question about the communications, about the families, reaching out to the families with the survey questionnaire. How are you going to reach out to families that don't have access, either through online or whatever? So is there other means that we're going to be able to do it? And is there going to be in other languages? In PE, I had a clarifying question about, is it for 9th and 10th grade only, and that's what you're discussing, or is it across the board based on that? There was a question of, I'll put this one in my comments, but I would like to know a little bit more about the professional development that is being done, because there was a comment by Mr. Childress regarding what is happening, and I'd like to know a little bit more about that. So those are my questions for right now, and then I'll save my comments for later.
Dr. Skelly, you want to?
Yeah, so in terms of the metrics, I can come back with more on July 30th, but I think I outlined those. They're all headed in the wrong direction. I don't see a scenario in which we move from phase 2 without significant changes in the trajectory of those. I think we're just doing the heavy lift of trying to do phase 2 before thinking about phase 3. But I think the ideas here about cases, hospitalizations, test rates, all those are really important. And then, if we want to do Europe, if you want to look at what Europe did, you got to wait until the elementary folks do get involved. So I think we got a long ways to go. I think phase 2 is the best that we can do, and I think 6 weeks is really a minimum before you would do that. In terms of Edgenuity, as I mentioned, we've vetted other sources like UC Scout when we chose Edgenuity. We think it's the most robust platform. We have teachers who have used that program consistently, whether it's teaching summer school or in our support classes for kids who are doing independent study that we've had in the past at schools. Those have traditionally been remediation classes. So we feel good about that. In terms of the questionnaire, yes, we are going to do that in various languages. Our hope is that we can get the number of non-responses down to a manageable number, and then put really phone calls, other contacts with people to get everybody's response in terms of the questionnaire. But that's going to be that's a heavy lift, and one that we want to start this week, and we have a deadline of next Wednesday to get those results back. I think families will be anxious to respond, and schools are anxious to get that. You asked a question about physical education. Physical education is a 9th and 10th grade requirement. So those are the students that we're focused on. Typically, in other situations, we've had PE classes for upperclassmen who did not pass PE as a 9th and 10th grader. We don't anticipate putting those students into the PE classes in the fall, any sort of in-person PE class. And then in terms of the PD, maybe I'll just say this and wait for other people to respond, but I'm gonna just warn Dr. Kemke that she'll get to take that question after I've heard from all the board members, if that's okay.
Did you have another question, Mr. Lamb? I have a quick question. When can students sign up for both asynchronous and synchronous learning? In other words, could they take, for example, if they were taking 3 classes, could they take 3 classes asynchronous and another 3 classes synchronous?
We'll have an opportunity in the survey for folks to make a choice if they want to do that. We're really not, we're not nuts about that idea, Mr. Friedman. It just, and especially once the year gets started, it's just we're going to be doing staffing pieces on that. I mean, yes, we would like to, we think we have some good choices, but we're not going to sort of advertise sort of this choice. But if somebody wants to go through and say, hey, I want to take this course one way or this course another way, then staff will work through that on an individual basis. But we don't see a huge need for that kind of thing.
Okay. Any other questions from board members? I see Mr. Griffin has none.
I have one.
Linda, yeah, you have to speak up because you don't have your.
I would like to find out why we're meeting at 1 o'clock on July 30th and not our normal 7 o'clock. I think that, I mean, I know we've got 439 people on this today, but a lot of people are working, and I think, I feel like our normal meeting is at 7 o'clock, and I just want to know why we're not sticking with our normal schedule.
I'm not available on the 30th at 7, and I think that's why he did it, but I am available the 29th or 28th.
Okay, I would be available those nights too. I just want to give the most people the opportunity to participate via Zoom or whatever way we can. And I feel like the daytime thing, it just doesn't work for everyone.
Are other board members available the 29th, 28th?
I can make myself available, but I agree with Linda. I think it's important that we have a consistent time, our usual time. I thought this was going to be a short meeting, and look where it's at. So
Yeah,
I think
I mean,
we need to do more of this.
Yeah. Bob, are you, are you available the
Well, yeah,
Wednesday?
but now I've got a different take on that because a 7 o'clock meeting, when we have 5-hour meetings, we're getting out of there at 11 o'clock.
Yeah,
And that is not good from the quality of our work and tackling things when we're really at our best. I don't mind, and I guess I would say at this point, if we're going to be meeting in Zoom for a foreseeable future, or probably a very long time, we ought to come up with a new board meeting time that's kind of predicated around Zoom meetings, so that perhaps, it doesn't have to be 7, it might be 5 or some other time, and then we ought to nail it down as the time for our board meetings, unless it's a special board meeting.
Can I
And-
suggest,
yeah.
Dr. Skelly, we come back and you survey the board and try to, I think you've heard at least a majority want to go to evenings, and maybe we just start somewhat earlier. Let's see how long this meeting runs.
yeah, I agree with Bob. I don't like the 7 o'clock time either. Those meetings are very difficult meetings. And especially on Zoom. Zoom is a very difficult platform when you're going hours and hours and hours. So I don't like that 7 o'clock time.
I think
Can I
there's-
make another
I
comment?
make another point. So I think Linda made a very good point. I think what she's trying to say is that we need to have a consistent time on Thursdays when people expect to have our meetings, so that they don't see this as a surprise. That we don't want this to be a surprise. We want this to be an open meeting where people understand what's happening. I understand and am sympathetic to Bob and Peter. So if we want to start a little earlier, because my brain goes mush by about 11 o'clock, so starting a little earlier would be okay. But I think we have to be consistent.
Well, if you notice what I said, Greg, Trustee Land, we need to come up with a new regular time on a go-forward basis. I'm not for moving meetings around vicariously. I mean, all I'm saying is figure out where we're all in a happy place to be productive. And let's get in there and let's make sure the public knows about it. We
Agreed.
do want public participation.
Yeah.
Can I say one more thing, Mark? Okay, we're elected to do this job, and it is a job, and it's become more and more of a job given COVID, and a lot of people in the same boat we are, because everything has changed so much. But I'm here. I think we're all here to do the best job we can, and sometimes we have to have a night meeting, and it's going to be late. But it's not like we do this every day of the week. So I think we need to prepare ourselves. This meeting could go long, recognize that, and have the meeting so that the most people can participate as possible. I'm not in love with Zoom right now. My camera is not working, which it may or may not be a good thing. But I think that we're elected to do this work, and I want to do the work, and I want to give the time, as much time as we can. And if it's 11 o'clock at night, so be it, because I see that as my job. So I agree with consistency and our meeting nights, but I think sometimes we just have to do what we have to do.
And I'm sorry that we had no meetings scheduled in July. And
That's right.
I made commitment meetings on Thursdays in July. So I think we can do the day before, and I think that Wednesday in 2 weeks or whatever, that's 2 weeks in a day. And I think Dr. Skelly and I can try to work out a new starting times that hopefully maybe like 6 o'clock instead of 7. Since it's Zoom, people don't have to drive to the district office. So they can join, and we can sort of try to finish by 10. I think
that's a good idea, Mark. And I think 6 is a much more reasonable time than 1 in the afternoon, particularly with a lot of people who have children, young children at home, or whatever's going on right now in their lives and their jobs.
I think we need to move back to the topic, and it's up to Dr. Skelly and I to work it out. And if we, it sounds like we have some sort of consensus. If not, he will survey the board members to see if they all agree. And again, I apologize for not being available on the 30th, and we'll just move to the 29th. But after that, we can go all on Thursdays. Okay, any more questions from board members?
Now, I got a question that goes to process because I want to know what a clarifying question is and what questions about the presentation are, because I thought if there was in fact a clarifying question, could you explain a point? But I noticed we went into a lot of questions that actually had to do, you know, that are more after we hear from public. So I want to understand what is clarifying question?
To me, it's, can you explain a point? It's like my question. Can you pick one, or, you know, where the presentation didn't address something where, you know, left something vague? Okay. Does that help?
Okay. Yeah, no,
It left that vague, my question, so I thought it was appropriate for this time.
okay.
Okay, we're gonna go to public comments. And I'm going to give, the public comment order is gonna go as follows. First is gonna speak is Carrie Velez. She wanted to speak as the CSEA rep. She wasn't given the opportunity because we didn't know she wanted to speak then. So we'll let her speak first. She can speak broader than this item if she wishes. After that is Robert Bierman, Saswati Paul, Ariane Adamchikova, who is going to speak in Spanish, and I will give her extra time after her 3 minutes to translate it back for everyone in English. Rachel Lauderdale, Nils Headley, Anne Ree. I have Craig Childress down. Craig, let me know if you still want to speak on this item. Isabel Bushman, and then last is Kevin Nelson. Craig, just send me a message if you want to still speak. Moving on to the first speaker is Carrie Velez. I got to find her. We just have to unmute her. Here. Carrie, you can speak. Ms. Velez.
Good afternoon, President Friedman, members of the board, Dr. Scully, and everyone here today. I am Carrie Velez, CSEA President. I would like to thank you for recognizing we did communicate earlier today that we wanted to speak at today's board meeting. CSEA and the district are scheduled to meet with a mediator at the end of the month to work through and hopefully finalize our contract together. CSEA will be holding their annual conference virtually this year and next week. We will be networking with other classified staff throughout the state and collaborating with other districts on how classified staff can be most effective during the pandemic in the workplace. As August approaches, discussions surrounding students returning to school, as well as infectious rates, are ramping up both locally and across the nation. There is still a lot of uncertainty in the details of our return to school plans. We ask the district to work with classified staff to build and find solutions to what-if scenarios and to be flexible with reassignments and work from home alternatives. Regardless of which phase we return to, together, we must have a comprehensive plan in place to protect the health and safety of our students and our faculty. I thank you for your time, and you guys have a great afternoon.
Thank you. Next is, I guess he's speaking from the moon, Mr. Bierman. You have 3 minutes.
How you doing, Mr. Freeman and the board? I'm talking to you specifically about slide 13 of the presentation, the GPA bump. This is something that I've met with Ms. Kemke on, and I am very pleased to see that, you know, we are progressing in this area. I do want to implore the board to pick up this action quickly so that they can approve any necessary modifications to the policies and get this approved, and making sure that it's retroactive for students who have already taken some college courses, such that they can get in by the end of September, having this approved so that grades can be corrected and set, so that those seniors who are submitting their applications for early decision can get their applications in with this appropriate GPA grading. I think this is something that is pretty straightforward, but I know there's a lot of intricacies in the board policy. So I do wish to implore the board to pick up and direct the staff to get these in front of the board for their first readings and second readings, no later, having the second reading and approval no later than the end of September. Now, Mr. Friedman, if you'll indulge me just for one more minute, I just want to commend the board, the staff, the teachers about working on this reopening plans. As an educator myself, I teach for UC Berkeley Extension and San Francisco State University. I'm actually taking a professional development course with our Center for Equity and Excellence in Teaching and Learning on online instruction. One of the biggest things for me when I was doing the spring semester was Zoom fatigue. You know, lectures can get very hard to watch for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours on end. So one of the things that we're really stressing and really working on is actually a hybrid online, that is partial asynchronous instruction, i.e. like recorded lectures that the students that are broken up into bite-sized pieces, 10, 15-minute type pieces, that the students can consume at their own pace. But then with some synchronous classes in which we then utilize that synchronous time, not for lecture, but for discussion and further development, demonstration, etc. So this is something that, you know, if anybody's interested, I'm willing to talk to them about and provide some information. You know, this is something that, you know, I teach 6 classes at the collegiate level. And, you know, putting together this kind of material for this is quite significant. So this is something I think, you know, should be considered as part of the teachers as they're going through and doing this. And again, as I said, you know, thank you for indulging me, but this is something that I think, you know,
Thank you.
I'm willing to help with.
Thank you. Appreciate the offer. Next is Miss Saswati Paul.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak today. My name is Shashwati Paul, and I'm the San Mateo High School Foundation co-president. Thank you for your efforts to date to plan a safe reopening of our high schools. Coronavirus cases are increasing at alarming rates in California and around the country this week because we have reopened too quickly. In San Mateo County, we are close to a 5% test positivity rate, and many counties have far exceeded this rate, above which it is unsafe to reopen. And we have not even experienced the spike in cases from the 4th of July weekend, which we will begin to see by the end of the week. I predict the ensuing weeks into the first half of August will give us even higher rates of hospitalizations and death. I have reviewed the district's current school reopening plan, and I strongly urge the board to begin with phase 1, as many school districts in our region and state are doing. There are too many uncertainties as to how PE on campus in phase 2 can be effectively and safely implemented, particularly at a school as large and diverse as San Mateo High School. For instance, how will students who decide to stay after their PE class be monitored and kept separated from those on campus for ELD and PE? Will students have time to get to school for PE after their previous period ends? These and many other details need to be sorted out before it is prudent to move on to phase 2. More than anything, I want schools to reopen and my son to return to campus, but we must do it in a way that acknowledges the varied demographics between our district schools and factors in the health and safety of our students and teachers. For now, the only prudent course of action is to open with phase 1 and a rigorous synchronous distance learning model. Once again, I will ask for the planning process to be transparent and inclusive of our teachers and other stakeholders. Their lives literally depend on it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so next what we're going to do is a little different. Miss Adamchikova, I'm going to give you 3 minutes to speak in Spanish. I understand you want to speak in Spanish. Is that correct? in Espanol,
Um,
correct?
I would, I didn't get a specific answer when I asked about it, so I'm going to go in English. My understanding, though, is that now things will be translated afterwards. So I think what I will do is I will present some points in English, and then I will translate them into Spanish.
That's fine. And I'll give you 3 minutes in each language.
Okay.
Up to 3 minutes. I'd appreciate if you take less. I'd also like you to stay on the line. We have 2 Spanish-speaking parents who I'm going to recognize after you and ask you to translate for the board. You are a district employee, right?
Yes, I can do that.
Okay, thank you. So you go first.
Okay. Bueno, me llamo Ariane Adamchikova. Llevo 18 años en este distrito enseñando español y también ELD. So my name is Ariane Adamchikova, and I've been teaching in this district for over 18 years, primarily Spanish, but I have also taught ELD. I am currently teaching at Cappuccino High School. I've changed a lot of what I wanted to say today because I've noticed that there have been changes and some since last weekend when I emailed the entire board, and I am happy to see some of these changes reflecting, I think, what I've written and some other teachers have written as well. I understand how tricky this all is, and I just want to explain that I think that all of us are not only feeling fatigued by the pandemic itself, but a lot of teachers and a lot of staff members, I feel like we want to be part of the process, and we haven't felt like there's been a way for us to be part of the process. And I feel like this has created a lot of division and distrust between family members, between parents, between board members, even between the district leadership, between teachers. And I just want to give an example. For me, I think in the spring, that was not distance learning. I want that to be really clear for any parent or anybody. That was not true distance learning. That was an emergency pandemic response. And everybody did the best that they could in that moment. For my part, I was trying to hold kids harmless, but I was also trying to keep them motivated and engaged weekly with me. I had synchronous classes. Very few showed up. I had 4 of my classes were freshmen. Very few of those kids knew that they needed to show up and that they needed to do anything after March 13th. So I spent probably half of my 60 to 70 hours a week just calling homes, explaining Canvas features to families and students, explaining that yes, you still need to be motivated, you still need to engage, and it's good for us, and it's good for all of us to stay engaged with each other. So that's one of my primary frustrations, is that some of this distrust I feel like came out of what we all experienced in the spring, which is not what any of us want to do in the fall. But I want to strongly, strongly encourage that we start in phase 1 and that many more teachers and families get clear opportunities to understand what is happening, to participate in town halls, and that teachers get really a lot more guidance with distance learning. I felt like I learned a lot, but I don't feel like everybody's at the same place with me. A lot of people are spending this week, and right now during this meeting, they're in a Stanford course on distance learning. I wish I were there myself, but I feel like this is really important.
Time is half up if you want to.
Okay. Yeah, so those are my main points. I do feel like you shouldn't be making decisions before having reached out to families. Primarily ELD families that speak Spanish have had no opportunity to engage in these conversations. We need town halls at each of the schools and with each of our different parent groups. And teachers, we are amazing at making things work, and we've got great ideas, and we need to be part of these subcommittees, and we need to be part of the planning process, as well as the staff. We all need to be part of it. And I would really like to stress to the district leadership to please bring us in. Thank you. Voy a resumir algunas de mis ideas en español ahora. Yo enseño español ahora en Cappuccino High School. Antes enseñaba en San Mateo High School. Quería empezar por decir que esta pandemia es súper difícil para todos y lo que pasó en la primavera a partir del 13 de marzo no es igual a lo que los maestros quieren hacer en el otoño. Entonces, lo que hicimos del aprendizaje y las lecciones que nosotros creamos en la primavera era una emergencia. Muchos de nosotros como maestros tuvimos que cuidar a nuestros familiares, a nuestros hijos, a nuestros ancianos. Tuvimos muchos estreses en nuestra vida en casa. Algunos hicieron mucho, algunos hicieron menos, pero todos hicimos lo que pudimos en esa época. De mi parte, yo creo que de nuestra parte, la parte de los maestros, lo que queremos hacer es recibir mucho más apoyo para poder planificar un aprendizaje a distancia en las computadoras que nos mantengan muy, muy seguros en casa. O también en lugares seguros y a mucho distanciamiento para poder trabajar en línea con nuestros compañeros de clase y nuestros maestros. Necesitamos este apoyo del distrito para poder empezar el nuevo semestre. Yo creo que no ha habido mucha oportunidad para los padres de familia ni para los maestros y el personal de este distrito para participar en estas conversaciones. Y nosotros tenemos mucha sabiduría y necesitamos tomar parte. Yo estoy rogando al distrito que nos provea más oportunidades antes de tomar todas las decisiones. Necesitamos ser parte y tomar parte de las decisiones. Ok, muchas gracias. Tengo más confianza ahora porque estoy viendo que están poniendo algunos cambios en los planes. Muchas gracias a los miembros de la Junta Educativa. Muchas gracias al liderazgo del distrito. Thank you.
I would appreciate it if you would stay with us, Madam Chakova. We have two Spanish-speaking parents who I'm going to recognize now. They weren't on my original list because of communication difficulties to understand that they wanted to speak. So first I'm going to call on Adriana Gomez, and then Evelyn Garcia. So Senora Gomez, please speak first. Are you going to speak in Spanish, in Espanol? And I would just, you two work it out. She can make her whole speech and then you can just summarize it for us. Okay?
Okay.
I think that works. In Zoom, I think all that's going to work.
Señora Gómez, soy muy mala con la interpretación, entonces voy a pedir que hable despacito y que quizás 4 o 5 frases a la vez y voy a traducir cada 4 o 5 frases. ¿Está bien? Gracias.
How's this going to work?
I've asked her to speak slowly and that I will try to translate like 4 or 5 phrases at a time. I'm not a great interpreter, but I will try my best.
So we'll have to double the time for that. Okay. Double the, got it. Señora Gómez, por favor.
Hola, buenas tardes a todos. Mi nombre es Adriana Gómez y mi hijo va a cursar el 12º grado en high school este otoño. ¿Prosigo?
You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah, unmute.
Sorry. Okay, so my name is Adriana Gómez and my son is going to enter 12th grade this year.
Trabajo para el distrito de Millbrae en el programa de después de escuela. Y igual como tenemos la misma preocupación por nuestros estudiantes. Mi mayor preocupación es que muchas familias no están tomando la precaución que nosotros estamos tomando. Ellos están de viaje. Ellos están teniendo un verano normal, yendo a otros países o a otros estados. y creo que no va a ser seguro volver a las aulas. Y
Okay, voy a traducir. So I work in an after-school program in Millbrae, and I am really concerned about all of us returning to school. One of the things is that many of our families are not taking the precautions that we should be. Many people are traveling, many people are going out of town and out of this country. And I'm very concerned about coming back, about us returning to school.
Pero también creo que muchas familias están tomando conciencia, pero no tienen los recursos. Sé que han estado haciendo mucho por los estudiantes que a lo mejor no tienen internet. Agradezco mucho eso y espero que este otoño más familias puedan estar conectados en el mismo nivel.
I believe that our families are doing what many families are trying to do the best that they can. I do know that a lot of our families need more resources for the internet. I really appreciate those that have really gone out of their way to help our families and our kids get through their courses. But we will continue to really need these resources in the fall.
Y también quiero agradecer que se han tomado el tiempo de enviar mensajes en español. Ahora son más claros. Y yo quiero que no olviden hacer eso porque ahora yo trato de hablar inglés por mi trabajo, pero en realidad no es mi primer lengua. Y yo estoy muy contenta que podemos entender un poco más y ahorita lo necesitamos. Necesitamos entender qué debemos hacer como familias en lenguaje en español.
So she really, I really appreciate that you have started sending out messages in Spanish. I always try to speak English, but I hope that you continue to send us messages in Spanish. And I'm going to ask her to repeat the last part of what she said because I can't quite remember. Señora, se me olvidó lo que usted dijo al final después de agradecer por los mensajes.
Y que yo necesito que que no olviden que tienen a hispanohablantes, porque en este momento es cuando más necesitamos comprender qué es lo que debemos hacer por nuestras familias.
Okay.
You're muted.
Muted yourself.
Sorry. So please don't forget that you have Spanish speakers in this community. Now more than ever, we really need to understand. So please, please continue translating everything into Spanish. And yeah.
Porque en medio de esto todos necesitamos avanzar de la misma manera que lo hacen los demás para poder salir adelante.
So we all need to be able to move forward more than ever during this pandemic. We need the tools to be able to move forward. So that's why we need it in Spanish. So right now, please continue.
Gracias y gracias a usted por la traducción.
Gracias a usted. Yo soy malísima con la traducción, pero gracias. Okay, so she says, thank you very much for listening to her and thank you for the translation. I just have to say that my translation was terrible. My interpretation skills in the moment are very slow.
I thought they were pretty good. I'm just going to say you did a very good job.
I appreciate it. We have one more, and if it wasn't, you know, Mr. Land is really complimenting you because if you didn't do it, he did. Thank you, Senora Gomez Gracia. Miss Garcia, Senora Garcia, Evelyn Garcia, you can speak next. If you're in a it works better if you take your mask off if you're not if you're by yourself.
Hola, buenas tardes. Yo voy a hablar en español. Le agradezco mucho que me preste atención y que no me vayan a cortar la llamada como la otra vez. Mi preocupación como madre es que quién va a estar al pendiente de nuestros hijos, que ellos sigan las reglas necesarias, como usar mascarilla, usar sanitizer, todo lo que va para su salud, porque allá siempre va a haber, vamos a correr un riesgo como hijos y como padres. Se nos van a enfermar y eso es lo que esa es mi preocupación mayor.
Ok, voy a traducir, gracias. So she's, her major worry or concern is who can the kids rely on, that they will be following the rules in school on keeping their masks on and keeping distancing and following all the protocols, because it won't just affect their children, it will also affect their families. That's her major worry.
Okay. Garcia.
Tiene más, yo puedo traducir más. Okay.
Sí. Y otra cosa, para mi ver, creo que estaría muchísimo mejor que nuestros hijos estudien en casa a distancia. Así no ponemos en riesgo a muchas personas que nosotros tenemos de la tercera edad, que son las que están más en riesgo en esta pandemia.
Okay, and so I really encourage us to, I really want my kids to be learning at home, distance learning, because there's a lot of people at risk in our homes. We've got a lot of elderly people that we're taking care of in our homes. Continúe, señora.
Yo, por ejemplo, mis hijos los mantengo ocupados. Como madre tengo que estar pendiente de que mis hijos estudien, aún así no hayan clases en la escuela. Salgo a caminar con ellos con la debida precaución, pero yo sé que andan conmigo y van a hacer mi caso. Pero en la escuela no, los maestros no van a estar pendientes de cada uno de nuestros hijos.
Okay, and so as a mother, I know that I can keep my children safe at home, and I can keep them working. I make sure that they're learning from home. I keep them engaged on the computer. I can keep them going. And when I take them out of the house, I know whether they're being safe and acting safely. But if they're at school, I don't know that the teachers can all make sure that they're following the rules and being safe. Continúe.
Okay. Muchas gracias. Nada más esa es mi mayor preocupación, y darle las gracias a cada uno de ustedes. Darle las gracias a cada uno de ustedes por estar pendiente de nosotros como padres de familia, y como alumnos también de nuestros hijos. Pues yo como madre he recibido llamadas de algunos maestros y eso es muy saludable tanto para mí, porque yo sé que están pendientes de mis hijos. Entonces yo me preocupo por los...
Señora García, no se escucha muy bien ahora.
Okay.
Voy a traducir lo que entendí. So I thank you very much. I thank each of you for listening to us, entonces, y señora, al final, ¿qué decía?
Que he recibido llamadas de algunos maestros preguntando por mis hijos, y eso es muy importante para mí como madre. Yo sé que hay muchos alumnos y ellos tienen a muchos alumnos a su cargo, pero aún así creo que eso es importante tanto para los alumnos como para los hijos.
And I've also received phone calls from many of my kids' teachers, and that's really, really important for me. I know that the teachers have a lot of students, but I really appreciate that they've called.
Muchísimas gracias por su ayuda también, por traducirme esta vez.
De nada, señora García.
Estén bien. Gracias.
Oh, muchas gracias. So she thanked me for translating as well. And okay. Gracias, señora García.
Gracias.
Gracias, señora Garcia. Thank you, Ms. Adam Shakova. You went above and beyond what was required. We appreciate your translations for the board. Gracias, Ms. Señora Garcia and Señora Gomez. And we're going to move on to the next speaker, who is Miss Lauderdale, Rachel Lauderdale. You have 3 minutes.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hello, President Friedman, Board of Trustees, district leaders, and community members. I've spoken here many times, but unfortunately, I find it necessary to provide my credentials each time I speak to help combat the current negative narrative about teachers in both our school community and the country. I am Rachel Lauderdale. I teach English, guided studies, and advisory at Hillsdale, where I'm also the instructional technology coordinator, empowerment through action group leader, and the girls varsity soccer coach. Currently, I'm working 30-hour weeks during my summer break on 2 return to school subcommittees and 3 sub-subcommittees in hopes that I can help prepare our teachers for whatever phase you all decide to have us enter. Like the rest of the teachers in the district, I am far from lazy, nor am I ever satisfied with the status quo. Although I think there are many issues with the district's plan that put our teachers, staff, students, and their families at risk, I want to bring another concern to your attention that Craig mentioned in his comments. Parents and Dr. Skelly have stated that distance learning in the spring was a failure and did not work for students, many times blaming teachers for this failure. No one would argue that the spring was difficult for us all. No teacher or anyone at the district office was prepared to switch their entire curriculum on a dime to teach completely online in the middle of a global pandemic. Unlike the current narrative might assume, many teachers are eagerly awaiting at home for direction and work they can do to improve their practices and redesign their curriculum to better support all students in the fall. Since March, our district leadership has had 4 months to help create a plan to prepare teachers to get better at distance learning. We have a group of 20 or so teachers led by the tireless effort of our district PD coordinator, Sabby Hopkins, working very hard to do whatever we can to plan and prepare with very little guidance from our district leadership. Dr. Skelly, in his meeting with BHS families, toted the fact that the district is spending $1.5 million on professional learning communities planning time over the summer. The staff lucky enough to be accepted for the funds have had very little direction from the district to guide their planning. The district is spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on instructional technology tools, but has not published a list for teachers to start exploring and learning. They haven't received a unifying message or goal, which means they are left on their own to find tools and resources to redesign their curriculums to better support all students in distance learning. Dr. Skelly also likes to emphasize that teachers will have 4 PD days at the beginning of the year to improve their distance learning practices. However, I'd like to point out that these 4 days are not extra. We're moving our normally scheduled PD opportunities throughout the year to the beginning of the year. Additionally, there's no way that 4 days is enough time to have all teachers and staff rally around a centralized message and to master Canvas, Zoom, Remind, synchronous distance learning, PPE, and safety protocols, to only name a few topics that will be covered in those 4 days. Not to mention the time it will take for teachers to redesign entire curriculum maps and refine their content to fit in the new distance learning parameters. If this plan does not work, it will not be at the fault of our teacher leaders trying their best to come up with a development plan during their summer break, but a lack of leadership at the district level.
Time is up. Please wrap up.
Teachers are committed to doing this work and doing it well, but we need to move past the conversations of phases and face the inevitable distance learning that most of our students will face in the fall. Teachers need district leadership that will plan that with a plan and focus to move us forward. We need district leadership that trusts and supports teachers as professionals, and we need leadership that unites instead of divides us. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Mr. Headley, Nils Headley. You have 3 minutes from the time you start speaking.
Okay, hello Superintendent Skelly and board members. Craig Childress and Rachel Lauderdale have said many of the things I intended to say. So I will add comments as a teacher at Mills who also has a son at Mills. As I helped pass out yearbooks at Mills last week, it felt good seeing my students and my son's friends, and yet it also accentuated what we are really being asked to decide. This week, Governor Gavin Newsom has closed movie theaters, indoor dining, museums, and more statewide, citing concerns about ventilation and COVID spread. Now, Aragon, Hillsdale, and Mills are all of the same modular style, so my next comments will address this issue of building architecture. Today, I looked at a campus map of Mills. By my rough calculation, only 15% of classrooms have windows that open for ventilation, mainly the math wing where I teach. If you aren't, for safety's sake, allowed to take your child to a movie, why would you send your child to rooms with limited ventilation? None of us want distance learning. It isn't as good as person to person. It's a lot more work for the teachers and students, and it's going to be tough. but it is the choice that we need to make for the beginning of the year. Thank you, and I yield my time.
Thank you, appreciate that. The next speaker is Anne Ree. Miss Ree?
Hello.
Hello?
Okay. As we move close, can you hear me?
Yes, please begin.
As we move closer to the start of school and as plans and details as to how exactly that will start to solidify, I implore you to consider the differing needs of each high school and to please continue communicating and including teachers and site administrators in the development of your plans. The details that need to be worked out in implementing a modified phase 2 as specified in Dr. Skelly's presentation seem daunting, if not impossible, to carry out successfully and safely in a uniform manner across all high schools. These details will vary greatly from site to site based on differing demographics and differing site facilities. A blanket policy determining which students rather than how many students are on campus is beginning to seem like an unwise choice. You need input from those in the trenches, teachers and site administrators, to come up with workable and safe plans. Perhaps giving each site the flexibility in determining the number of students it can allow back might be a better option. Safety is the utmost concern, and if there is no such flexibility, then the district should seriously consider starting the school year in phase 1 rather than phase 2. Granted, there are situations where high-level decisions need to be made, leaving logistics and details of execution plans to be determined at a future time. This is not one of those situations. The feasibility, efficacy, and safety of phase 2 need to be considered in more detail and solidified before a uniform policy is adopted and put into place. Unfortunately, the current specifications of phase 2 create more questions than answers. I would like to quote from a fellow parent, Sherry Countryman, who could not be here today due to work commitments, and she gave me her permission to share her thoughts. As a parent and community member of a rising junior at San Mateo High School, I wonder how even a reduced student population on campus could be effectively monitored at this time. Should teachers and administrators be asked to devote their bandwidth towards constant monitoring of who is or who isn't on campus versus at home during any given period? Shouldn't the time and effort of our teachers and administrators be devoted most immediately to the effective delivery of online instruction within the safest environment possible? Stories abound about the lack of cleaning supplies and testing at this time. Parents like myself hope to hear that the logistics of any plans are being thoroughly vetted with our teachers and principals. We worry as much about them as we do our own families. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Ree. The next speaker is Ms. Isabel Bushman, who will be followed by Mr. Kevin Nelson. And those are our last two speakers. Ms. Bushman.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. Craig touched on a lot of what I wanted to say, but I really want to emphasize and add to the bringing of students to school for PE idea. You have to remember that almost all students who take PE are freshmen and sophomores, and most of them, if not all, cannot drive, thus relying on either public transportation and or a parent or family member to bring them to school. This create additional stress on a household. I speak as a Foster City resident who would need 20 to 30 minutes each way to drop off and pick up my child, depending on the time of day. And note that public transportation takes 2 buses and about an hour and 20 minutes each way as well. And then allowing students to stay for lunch or until lunch or until the end of the day just kind of defeats the purpose of keeping them home at all. I heard something noteworthy today that today's COVID update reported that San Mateo County accounted for more than half of all the new cases in the Bay Area. So that's, I think, something of big consideration. But whatever you do, I think you need to do it soon so teachers, staff, and families can prepare. We're only a month away and people do need to make plans. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Last public speaker is Kevin Nelson.
Hey, thank you. Just 2 points before I go into my written comments. So I saw an Ed join this afternoon that Los Altos has hired 5 nurses to bring on campus. So as far as safety is concerned, that's a move in the right direction. And a reference to a point earlier about Scout and BYU. Question is, who's going to pay for that? Who's going to arrange that? Who's going to set that up? There was a lot of discussion of equity earlier on. We all know that students and parents who comes from family of means can easily do that. Scout is $400. And that's a major piece of money for people who don't know how to arrange those. I talked to Scout twice last week. Their program is run on their own Canvas platform. So if we plan to use it, we can't shift it onto our platform. It's proprietary. So those are other issues that'll have to come about. So I want to hop into online teaching. So after leaving Burlingame, I pivoted to become an online teacher. I'm a certified college instructor in economics and political science. I've been doing it for the last 5 years. I'm certified by the California Community College's Online Education Initiative, OEI, and all of my courses have been validated through that. Most recently, I received a grant and shifted my courses to what's called a ZTC, a zero textbook cost program. So all of my college courses currently are free of charge to my students. So we're moving students to zero cost transfer courses. What does that do for the high school level? Well, I've been doing this for 5 years and I understand what's happening, and high school, college instruction is very similar to what we're seeing. Everything we do in college is 100% for the online community. It's 100% online. Everything we do is collaborative. Course evaluations, instruction, engagement, everything that we do out there is online. Online teaching is going to require students and teachers to know how to engage with one another. And this is far more than just using your Canvas tools. Earlier this summer, I digitally attended the California Teaching Conference for Community Colleges. We're missing an entire element of support through Canvas. This is your counselors, this is your administrators, this is your aides that are doing a variety of other things to keep students in the game beyond just the delivery of instruction. We also need to implement the Canvas Passport program, which is a training program for students and teachers. We've had Canvas for 4 years. We have never trained the students or the parents in how to properly use it. Our teachers need to have effective instruction and instructional design. We need to build Canvas courses that are highly organized, intuitive for the user, and essential. These are essential for student success. Students need to know exactly where to find things. In the discussions of our planning right now, people don't know where to find things in Canvas. Moving forward, there is really no reason to have us working from campus. Many of you read about 40 principals getting infected, all coming to campus. There's no reason to be training on campus. Everything we're doing, all the training, all the collaboration can be done online. Everyone around us is working in Canvas, Zoom, and Slack. They're getting things done. A teacher commuting an hour to the site to be able to do a job that they should be doing at home is a waste of time, and it's just putting people at risk. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that ends our public comment section. The board will now discuss the issue and provide direction to the superintendent. Mr. Land, you go first.
Lucky me. All right. So first of all, I want to say that we're making progress. Just want to thank staff. I want to thank Dr. Skelly. I want to thank the teachers who've really had input into this. I want to thank the parents. This has been a process, and it's been an evolving process, and I appreciate it. And we still have work to do. So getting right to it, here's some of the concerns that I have, or at least some of the feedback I want to give. But I really do feel like we've made some headway in a lot of areas, and I want to say thank you to that. So the specifics I'm really concerned about, and I brought them up in a couple of the questions, is I really still think we need to do some work on the metrics. I know we're talking about what in the slide, talking about what's happening with the health department, but also I want to look at it from the other end of successes. If schools are really being successful in how they're working, what would be the next phase for them, and what would that look like? So I think we still have some work to iron out each way. This to me is a continuum. These phases act as a continuum because we're going to need all of these phases any one time, going back and forth based on what happens with COVID during the next year and a half, even more. So I think we need to be very concerned about still fleshing out some of these phases a little bit more, using these metrics as well. I am concerned about the professional development. I think Mr. Nelson, I think a few others brought up a few points that need to be clarified. It'd be nice in the next meeting to really go into what teachers will be able to get and be available for. Because I think one of the things, I think professional development for the technology, for Canvas, for how to do it, and the design and instructional design of it is important. And one of the things that has been missed is also how the relationship building relationships, and you know, my expertise doing the last few months of distance learning has been about elementary school. And with elementary school, it's just as important as high school kids, the connections that are made. And so how are we going to build relationships either through distance or through combinations of hybrid and bringing kids to campus? I love the orientation stuff that we're starting to develop. And I think that's great if we do it in a safe and using the 4 pillars of our county. Another question that I had just going into it is talking about the choices again. I'm glad that UC Scout is in the choices, so I want to make a comment. I'm glad that's part of it. I'm glad. I do think we need to consider ingenuity. I think people are saying that's a robust program, but I've heard pluses and minuses, and I just want to see us iron that out. Very similar to what we were talking about with Canvas. I talked about the Wi-Fi issues. I really want to know and really kind of close out how we're going to get 100% in our Wi-Fi access and giving access to kids and that really need it, because I think we did a really good job in the spring trying to do that, but I think there's still more to do. So I'm hoping to get a little bit more report in our last meeting. That's it. I really appreciate our Spanish teacher. I forgot how to say her name, but Ariane. Yeah. Yeah, I want to say I'm glad that she feels that we were listening. I think this is, again, an evolving process. And I think we're doing a good job at that. I am going to end with something that one of the parents spoke up. I think Ms. Ray did, Mrs. Ray. We talked about, one of the things that I'm actually part of as a principal in another district is I'm part of it. I created an operational team for my site. Aides, teachers, and we're using the CARE Act to stipend the results for the summer and work on some of the details of how it's going to work at my school. I think the school district gives this general rule, and we are giving guidelines for policy of how it's going to work in these phases, but actually how to implement those phases is going to vary from school to school. The ins and outs, the basic operations, and where are you going to put people, and where are they going to be, where the PE area is going to be, where the outside classrooms are going to take place. I think those need to be part of a plan and an operational team. So I'm hoping that maybe that could be the next thing, and have teachers recruited, having staff recruited with principals to work on that, and maybe using a stipend for their pay. Because to be honest, this is summer. I think one of the problems that we have to acknowledge is this is summertime and we're not getting paid for this. And a lot of people have been volunteering and going way above and beyond. So I'm very impressed with all the work that's been going on. I think finally, I think distance learning needs to have a very clear expectation and accountability. What are the elements that are going to be done? I think we've done, I think a lot of complaints, and I think Ms. Lauderdale mentioned it. Not everyone did a bad job. There were, just listening to some of the speakers today, teachers were making phone calls, trying to get people to meet and do all the above and beyond. I just think we need to have a set of parameters of what this online distance learning is going to look like. When is it synchronous? When is it asynchronous? When is it curating information? When is it small group discussion? When is it live? When is it class building? When is it just going to be discussions and talking about and connecting and making social connections? I think all of those need to be an element to make sure that this distance learning is going to be the most engaging and responsible, so that they are going to be graded, they are going to have expectations, and it's very clear. So I think that needs to be very set out and part of the professional development and to go. All right, that's it. Thank you.
Ms. Lees Dwyer, please unmute yourself. You have the floor.
Yes, I just did. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. It seems like another gift from COVID-19 is the year with no summer, and I feel that that's what everyone is kind of in, the year with no summer. First, I want to thank the people who have provided the many emails and who spoke today, because all positive input and ideas are really appreciated. And I really mean that, because there's no one who knows it all in this situation, and we can all learn together. I am very concerned about risk, and I'm people who know me know that I'm pretty risk averse. And we have to be very concerned about the risk to your students and via them, your families, and the risk to all of our employees, each and every employee who comes on our campus, all of the volunteers, everyone. So the masks, the hand washing, the distance, those three things, just those three, without all of the extra cleaning that has to be done, are going to be incredibly crucial for anyone who comes onto the campus. To be on campus, we're going to need people to keep watch. And I'd really like to hear from the principals on this issue, because I think that they know their campuses, they know how things work, what works, and I'd be very interested in hearing from them about how they see us keeping watch once we have employees and students back on campus, and starting with employees, if employees are actually going to come back on, each and every one of them. I think that's going to be really important. We cannot over prepare, and the parents and students cannot over prepare. And anyone, we all have to be thinking constantly and pay attention. Is your mask on? Are you washing your hands? Are you keeping your distance? I was on the Burlingame campus yesterday, and I saw about 16 high school boys, and they were not keeping any distance. They had no masks. They were having a wonderful time, but I looked at them and thought, this cannot carry into fall. This cannot carry into when kids are actually going to be back in school, because none of you, and they're on their bicycles, and they were all doing something that involved very close contact on the campus itself. Playing some games or something, but they were taking a risk, and we're going to have to be very attuned to that, and they're going to have to understand it. And I think that's going to also fall on our teachers and administrators to make sure that students understand the risk. The details by school would be something I'd really like to hear. I'd like to hear from the principal, and I'd like to know if they have site-specific issues, if they have site-specific options, if they have site-specific ideas. Those are the three areas that I'm very interested in. And I'm also, I guess I would add to that, outdoor instruction, because each site is very different. And the ability to do outdoor instruction is pretty much based on the weather, which we have less control over that than we have COVID-19 actually. But how they can do it, how they can implement that, I think is going to be very important. So I would like in our next meeting, if possible, to hear from them, to hear what their vision is, applying everything that we've heard today and have heard as we're moving forward to their specific site. And I'd like to hear what they think is going to be complicated for them, so that we can specifically address that. So that's probably where I am at this point in time. I'm very grateful for all the work. I don't like everyone not having a summer, including all the parents too, and the students. But I appreciate all the input, and we will get this done. And we're not a village, we're 6 cities, and we're going to have to all work to get this done. And I thank everyone who's working on it.
Thank you. Mr. Hanley.
Yeah, I appreciate all the work that's gone into this. It's an immense undertaking, and we really don't have any precedents to draw from. So it's very difficult work. I think we are making progress. I agree with Greg on that. I think we've come a long ways from where we were in May and June in our planning, and we've refined a number of things. I think in preparation, it's very clear that we're going to be 98% distant learning. If at least we're going to be 98% distant learning. So we should be proceeding, full speed ahead with phase 1 preparation. I don't think there's any doubt about that. Whether we can, I'm hoping that we can go into phase 2 and we'll take a look at that as we get closer. I would like to continue to keep that on the table, but clearly we're going to be, even if we do go into phase 2, it's still 98% at least distant learning for the district. The thing I am a little bit concerned about the comments about professional development not proceeding very smoothly, and I'd like to know more details about that, and where we are in professional development right now, and what's being provided and what's going to be provided in the next 30 days, and what we can do to make sure we're getting resources out to the teachers, and what we can do to help prepare for a distant learning environment. I'm also interested, and maybe we can have a little more discussion about this when we come back at the end of the month, about the orientation and what's going to be the details of the orientation. I'm interested in how we're going to try to educate students. It goes to Linda's comments about educating students about the safety protocols that they need to follow. And, I think, generally how we improve and how we move from phase to phase eventually is going to be greatly determined about community spread and how the virus is behaving, and that's going to be determined on how the community is behaving. So I think the orientation that we're giving to young people is important, and how we're emphasizing that. So I'm interested in learning a little bit more about the orientation that we have planning when we come back at the end of the month. But I think those are my comments right now.
Thank you. Mr. Griffin.
Okay. I want to thank everyone who actually made comments this afternoon. I think some of them, all of them, were real valuable. And I also want to thank the 500 odd people who at least were here to start the meeting and were paying attention. I think we're making progress with each pass, and I can see that generally we're going in the right direction. If I have to weigh in, I think we're really closer to phase 1 than phase 2. Although, I think the one thing that they say about COVID-19, you have to be flexible and ready to kind of, be reactive, pivot, all those kind of quick terms. And I guess there's nothing beyond phase 1, so there is no phase 0. So I guess we're probably closer to a phase 1 opening. I want to get more information. I want to hear more at our next board meeting about the authority and the metrics. We've got the county, and they got daily reports, and they kind of move back and forth. We got the governor, we got the Department of Ed. Everybody's weighing in. I kind of want us to look and figure out where we get our guidance, what is good, solid guidance, and what is sort of just lip service. I also do want to plug in the event there are best practices or things we can pick up from other places, that we are stay attuned and stay open-minded. I think safety is important, but I think we all want to get the students and all personnel back in the schools as soon as we can. One of the key points is the survey, and the survey really needs to be comprehensive. I know we got a bunch of languages. We need to reach out in as many languages as we possibly can. If we got email addresses, we need to get those out, get the emails out, snail mail, public notices about the availability of documents so that we get as close to 100% participation as we can. And, there's a couple of really good points about professional development, and they have to do with the amount of money we're dedicating and also the details and the logistics. And I think we really need to drill down there in terms of how we are doling it out. Are we getting it out soon enough? Are we getting the right types? And I think every time we look at this, we talk about we need more information about professional development. And I think if distance learning is going to be successful, we need two things. And one of them is really good technology, and the other one is really good instructional leaders or teachers who are delivering this distance learning. And I mean, that's what is really gonna, if we can deliver through the internet or through whatever devices, and we have people that know what they're doing, how to deliver it, how to mix the content up, how to overcome the Zoom, the thing that Zoom does to all of us after a while, I think we'll have a successful program. I think a communication plan is really, we can't overemphasize communication. Communicate so that we get all stakeholders and keep them in the loop, so we don't feel like when we reach out to parents that we don't have to worry about letting teachers or anybody else know this is focused to parents. Well, even if it's focused to one segment, everybody knows, everybody has access to the information, just to keep us all going, moving in the right direction, feeling like we are at least as part of the same team on the communication. So, and I have to wonder if, and it may not come to this, if we ever did get to open air or some kind of on-site learning. I was just thinking, while we're talking about the weather is really good on campuses in the fall, it is, some places it's downright hot, and I could see us putting a class. We can put a class out in the western exposure in 90 degrees with people, bright sun or just some other stuff. So we probably do need to have more site-specific planning to kind of deal with what spaces are available if in the event we could have a hybrid. So those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Griffin. I'll deliver my comments now. First of all, I want to thank the speakers, and we also had many emails come in, and I want to thank those. I looked at all of them. It's very clear. I think we're going almost totally distant learning somewhere between phase 1 and phase 2. I think the most important thing we need to make sure we do as we do this is set up those student learning centers for those students who come from households where they just can't learn effectively at home. We have to have a way to support those students, and that's where I would place my emphasis on all the different things we talked about doing on campus. To me, that's the one thing that we've got to have. Now, we talked about some phase 2 things such as ELD, special education, PE, and orientation. I'd like us to make clear in those instances that the only people, students and teachers, who would come on campus in those instances to interact among students and teachers would be those who are willing to, volunteers only. We would not force any PE teacher who did not want to teach face-to-face while we're in the current situation to do so. Same with special ed and ELD teacher. I understand that many of our, from the emails I've gotten over the last month, I understand saw a divide between our special ed and ELD teachers. Some said it was not, they weren't comfortable coming on campus and interacting with teachers, and I want to respect that. Others felt they needed to do so because the students, these students in question, really couldn't learn without the face-to-face interaction. Somehow we need to find that ground where we only bring back those who are comfortable, those teachers who are comfortable with interacting with students, and we only bring back those students in those outdoor interactions who are comfortable doing so. It's difficult. I think on the issue of metrics, the real issue is the public health departments of our county and state have abandoned us on metrics. Let's be honest here. They haven't done it. So we threw out all the metrics that we could possibly use. And the best we could probably do is put red light, yellow light, green light against all those different measures. And it was real easy for this meeting because there's a ton of red lights given what's going on. But we need public health to help us. And they have just, they're lost. They have went away and they're not doing us any good. They're not helping us, and I guess without them, we'll just have to look at the data and maybe do a red light, yellow light, green light on all the different metrics there and do it. Maybe if we start doing it, they'll do their job. And then my final comment is just, I think back to when I had some conversations with my parents and their generation. Many of them were teenagers during World War II. And they talked about, how growing up wasn't normal and sacrifices they had to make. And I think of, we got many emails where they wanted their kids back to normal. I think we have to be honest about this and really understand that this is a battle with the disease and the infection, and we can't get back to normal. Everyone's going to have to make sacrifices at times until we defeat COVID-19 or bring it down from where it is to something much smaller, maybe like Europe did. But until we do that, everyone needs to make sacrifices. And we need to say that out loud and let people know that. We just can't get back to normal while the virus is winning. And let's be honest. Right now, the virus is winning. It has come back stronger than where it was when we shut down in April, May. And, using my World War II analogy again, we lost some battles, but we came back and made sacrifices and worked together to win. And we'll have to do that here over the long run. And we're just going to have to recognize that all of us, everyone in the community, is going to have to make sacrifices. We're not going to be able to get to normal until we defeat COVID-19. And that's where I wrap up. That's you, Dr. Skelly.
He's on mute.
He'll unmute himself.
Okay, let's see. Before I turn this over to Ms. Kemke to talk a little bit about professional learning, I do want to respond to, there's a lot of comments that go on, but I do want to talk about just a couple. One is that, we have never said that spring was a failure. I mean, that's just not accurate. I mean, I think when I look at our district, and I've said this repeatedly at these board meetings, that we did heroic work in the spring, and no district did better than we did. Yes, it wasn't as good as it's going to be in the spring, but we did really, really good work there. And I also have said that 4 days is enough time for us to get ready for this. It's going to take a lot longer than that. And we've also said as a district office that we want to support teachers as much as we can. And so if there are needs that teachers have or foresee, then those should be brought to the fore so we can address those. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ms. Kemke.
So
we have been doing a lot of work around professional development, and I do want to acknowledge Sabby Hopkins, who is our professional development coordinator. As a teacher on special assignment, she's been going above and beyond to support and coordinate this work. As board meeting, our PD is designed around the vocal framework. It's a research-based idea on how online learning should look. And so what has been happening thus far is groups of teachers have developed modules that will launch for those PD days. The other piece of it is we provided time and space and money for PLCs to put in the work. And what we've begun to hear just recently is that these PLCs want a little more attention from the district. So trialing for teams, the digital tools that have been vetted by our curriculum coordinators, so that they have an understanding what the tools are and how they can gain kind of expertise on them. A lot of this, the PD work is difficult because we're in summer and we can't capture all the needs of all the teachers, but we are hearing. The other thing that I want to address is we're aware of the Stanford class that's going on right now, and it's like online learning 101 is the way that I would describe it. And we're taking a look at that and then seeing if we can then provide those recordings to our teachers in the next, within the next week or so. We weren't comfortable because we weren't able to vet the program like a lot of the stuff to know if it was going to be valuable for teachers or not. And we knew some of them were going to join it. This one in particular was free from what I remember. So we're going to reach out to Stanford and see if we can get access to it or have the trainer come to us. And the other thing that we're working on is talking with the county to see if some of the trainings that they've provided, some of them hit the mark for us, some of them may not be appropriate for for a district that's using Canvas. So we're looking to see if we can provide some of that before the year starts. I think, again, just acknowledging the huge lift this is for teachers. So I'm not surprised that there's angst around how we, the professional development that they need. The next step that we are going to make as kind of a department is providing a full update on what's going to be available to teachers and what is currently available to them. And then I'm going to host a Q&A just to see if I can make sure we're hitting the mark. Some of the comments that I heard just now were new, in terms of the, some of the things that are missing. I do know that there are several, that people are looking to see some kind of online learning 101 type of thing that we'll provide to them in the short term. The other thing I want to mention is just some of the modules that are in development or close to being done. One of them is teacher common expectations in Canvas. So some of this is, I think was referenced by the some of our comments were, what should teachers be putting into Canvas and how do we ensure that there are some common things that students will encounter? Because we heard a lot in the spring that Canvas courses are set up differently. And so that's going to be some of the PD that we're providing. There's also a group of teachers working on student orientation to Canvas, speaking to how do we ensure that students know how to access the material. So we're going to have that available to students for kind of their orientation so that there is some common orientation and schools will be able to tweak that. I think that's it for now. I'm happy to give a further update as we move forward, but we have, it's a big lift. I won't deny that fact.
So board members, you can comment here if you want. Remember, we have 3 other areas to cover.
I get it, but Julia, I think made a very good point. This is a big lift and a lot of things. So Julia, thank you for doing that. Could you send us in the weekly just what the modules are at this point and, just kind of give us what's happening and what you're thinking in a weekly, because I get what you're saying and I touched on it. And so, I mean, hopefully the one thing that I think is important from a curriculum standpoint and instruction is expectations. What are we going to expect about the distance learning? What are our expectations going to be? And I also was talking about like engagement is going to be an issue. How do we, create video and create circumstances where engagement's important. So to me, those are two critical things for your department.
Do you want me to respond to this, or do you want me to include, because there is one other piece? Okay.
Go ahead if you want. I'm sorry to take up so much time.
I mean, quickly, but in email, we got other agenda.
Okay.
Email fine.
I'll just say quickly, because I forgot to mention this in kind of my comments, is that we have engaged with a gentleman that has done a lot of work with Zoom and making it more engaging. So we're going to offer that as part of the training up to the beginning of the school year. But I'll put more of this into a weekly for you all.
Anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Freeman, can I make some more comments to answer some of the questions? So Ms. McManus has been meeting with each one of our sites to talk about those learning centers that you mentioned, Mr. Freeman. And I'd like to just ask her to make a few brief comments, if she could, about those. We are aware that some of this information is going to now need to be done, once we get the big picture by the sites. And we have several parents who spoke from San Mateo High School. That's going to be our most difficult campus when you look at the size of the campus, the number of students who are affected, and then the number of students on the campus. But I'll let Ms. McManus just make a few comments here if I could.
Okay. Our team, consisting of Linda Carlton, Brad Barncourt, Jim Hyde, and all of our facility managers have met with the admin teams of each site. And we actually provided an area where we felt we could easily implement outside teaching spaces that would provide no risk learning opportunities. And students who may not have the ability to have network or need quiet spaces to learn, can have access. And so through the process, when we kind of approached this project, we thought this is just probably fairly easy, but we soon realized that each site had different needs and different layouts, and that we were going to be having to be very specific and make modifications to the sites based on the admin team's needs. And I want to say that I was really amazed and really pleased with all the hard work our administrative teams have done, and the questions and the concerns and the issues that were brought forth, because I think we're going to have areas that we will, move forward with that are outdoors, that will provide, opportunities for students to, cluster and move forward as possible. And we hope to have a preliminary plan by the end of the week. We also need to go back and get further, have further questions asked. But again, this was, a lot of input was put on by, from the administrative teams. And I think that through that, we're going to have a model that will work for each site.
Okay, thank you. Is there any more comments, or should we move on to the next?
I need to make just a few more comments, Mr. Friedman, I'm sorry. One is that I want to just remind folks that the PE would be another voluntary experience. I mean, not every student would, everybody doesn't live close to the school, but there are a lot of kids who do live close to the school who do need that activity. The second point I want to make is just in response to the questions about Scout and BYU and their costs. I think we want to be clear that we believe that Edgenuity is the best non-synchronous learning option, and we're not going to pay for Scout or BYU, but we do know that families will do that. The question came up about Wi-Fi. We are asking about that in our survey. We did provide those in the spring, but they weren't as effective as being on campus was. Later in the presentation, we'll talk about the need for more staff to support schools in terms of supervision and the like. And then also this survey that we've done, we've shared with the board. If you have thoughts on it, we welcome those comments, and they've been run by a communications committee and our principals. So we feel good about the survey that we have coming up. And then finally, I do want to say, just to piggyback on Dr. Kempke's comments about the difficulty here. This is not, no matter how hard we work, we all realize that that synchronous learning online is not as effective as being in person. And so we're not well served, I think, by entering a blame game into, well, the district didn't support folks, or setting anybody setting up somebody for failure. That's absolutely the wrong thing. And we have no intention of setting anybody. Everybody here wants success here. And so I think we need to avoid that conversation. As I look to the next meeting, what I heard is that, and then finally, what I heard is that you want to hear about orientation, you want to hear from the principals, and some of the other topics that need some more time on. And then last, I think we are close about what we're doing here. There aren't huge differences between what we're saying and some of the speakers or folks that are critical of our plans. We are very, very close to having what I think is a plan that we can be very proud of. So that's all I have to say.
Anyone else?
Sorry. So just one last comment, just what you're saying. The idea of operational site groupings to talk about and iron out the details, I think that would be very beneficial. Is there a way we can support them through, in some way, to create teams at sites to kind of hash through what we're saying?
Yes, the principals and the operations chief at the site, they're working closely on this topic once we give them the general piece.
Including teachers too, because I mean, that's something I think is important, is giving teachers at the sites connection with the principals in some way. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else want to make a comment, or should we move to the next item? Okay, the next item is the middle college. Could you share the screen, Julia? I think there's a slide or two. I don't know, you going to present it, or Mr. Skatina?
We'll present it here. We'll present it here.
Yeah, but Ms. Kempke, Dr. Kempke can put it on hers. She's good at.
Oh, now here we go. We got it.
Okay.
Okay. I think Don is on the call.
Yeah, he's there. He's ready to go.
Okay, go ahead, Don. You can go.
Okay. Thank you for. We have the middle college plan here. As you know, we are at full capacity going into the fall semester with 180 students, and we do have a wait list of students. It's not many, but we are receiving applications throughout the summer. You know, our world sort of changed when the community college district went to full distance learning in the fall, but it did allow for us to make appropriate changes to our schedule. The biggest change was that Building 12, which had been our home for the past couple of years, would not be available to us. There are some priority in-person learning going on at CSM, but right now we do not fall into that category, understandably so. So we had to pivot and secure some places for our staff to work and potentially our students to meet with the staff to learn in person and also online, realizing that you know, some potential spaces are very limited. You know, going to a different school campus and having 180 students in a 1 week or 2 week period of time didn't make a lot of sense. So we will be working out of the Mustang rooms at the district office, potentially the adult school, depending on their plan, and some outside spaces close to the district office, close to the parking lot here at the DO. The staff worked for 4 or 5 days and developed a pretty comprehensive plan that includes 2 weeks of orientation with 1 day in person for every student. This would be in small cohorts of 5 with their teacher. And so we could probably share more details about our orientation plan later. You could see what our schedule is with the 5 stages, with the expectation that we're starting in stage 1. And the main purpose for this is because the students are going to be in distance learning with professors that we do not always have direct connections with. And so we want to support the students for the first couple weeks and then reassess after the week after Labor Day, reassess the ability to potentially go to stage 2, which would include putting emphasis on our advisory program being in person as opposed to the instructional, as opposed to English and social science being in person. As you can see, stage 3 would potentially increase us to 10 students in a classroom, and stage 4 with 15 students in a classroom, and you can see the frequency of the contacts there. You go to the next slide. So we did something for the first time. We built our master's schedule around the students' college schedule. In the past, middle college had told the students, here's when our high school classes are available. You need to build your college requests around it. Now that the school's so large, it makes far more sense to actually do a student-centered schedule where we'll build our sections around what the students' needs are around what college courses they got into. We will have office hours. The advisors will meet with during office hours, meet with students for 15 minutes, do one-on-one meetings. We're committed to every week or every other week, depending on whether we want longer meetings or not. Our advisory model will allow students to it will be synchronous for the 30 students that are in the advisory, and that will be online. When we start to go to in-person, then there will be sort of a combination of in-person and less frequent meetings in a synchronous environment. Finally, as you can see, the focus will be on synchronous distance learning, online learning, up until stage 3, where we will have to be very creative with having students in person and doing synchronous instruction from home. Finally, we had to secure office space for the staff to work, counselors to have space, and our wellness counselors, and we're securing offices here at the district office. So you can see that I will say that the schedule here is off by an hour. We're going to, the schedule that the students needed actually, after some revisions, after we plugged in our seniors, we were going to start at 8 o'clock and end by 3 o'clock instead of having a 3 o'clock. So that's it for middle college. Thank you.
Any board members wish to comment, or could you stop sharing the screen so we can get back to the board members? Whose screen? Who's there? Thank you. Does any board member wish to comment on this? Or are we all okay with their plan?
I just want to commend Dawn for doing such a great job. That really
I
looks
agree.
thorough. I think that's really great, Dawn. So good job.
I think it's thorough, and we have the space at the DO for your 6 teachers.
Yes.
Yes.
Where are we getting it?
The Puma conference room is where the teachers will be sort of their home base. We're going to actually put the copy machine up in that area for them, although not much to copy. But we have a room across from there that can be used for the counselor, for Mr. Morales, and down the hall for our mental health, our wellness counselor. Again, the staff really worked hard. I was in the meetings off and on, but they worked hard on this plan, and I really commend them on developing a plan that sort of makes the middle college experience a really unique experience, even though it's not starting the way a lot of all of us wanted.
Sort of community college drove that. Anyone else want to comment? Okay. Looking, Linda, no comment. We'll move.
Dawn, has the community college said they're just going to go for the semester, or have they said like for the whole year online?
Right now it is the fall semester. I think they'll fall in line with whatever the CSUs and the UCs end up doing, but mostly the CSUs and community colleges in the state. We need to probably be prepared for the spring semester potentially to be online also.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
Let's move on to item L3, the adult school. I believe there's a single slide. If you could put up, who's ever putting up the slides. And Kevin or Miss Taylor, Kevin, who do you want to speak?
Sure, I'm going to turn this item over to Ms. Taylor. Welcome. This is your first substantive board meeting. Here we go. Next slide.
Hello, everyone. First of all, I do want to acknowledge this very difficult job, and the district has done an amazing, incredible job. All of you, it's tough. So I just want to give an acknowledgement for your hard work. I think you've done a great job. San Mateo adult, we're in the process of still planning. We've done some really amazing things. You know, this is only my, I think, 9th day here. So I'm very new, but we have multiple committees that have worked very hard. Tech committee, curriculum committee. We have connected some of our teachers that have struggled with technology with mentors. So a lot of work has been happening up until now. And we do realize conditions can change and our plans can change. So as far as our communications, we conducted teacher, staff, and student surveys to help inform and direct our planning. We also have created a return to school living, breathing document that holds different areas of focus: our SMART Center, personnel and campus safety, our technology plans, our professional development and training, and student and teacher expectations. And this document is accessible to all of our staff and students so that they can keep up with what's going on, especially while they leave for their break after this week. As far as our site readiness, we are aligned with the district and the 4-pillar model of safety. We've made some really great progress this week. We now have our plexiglass already installed at these very high traffic areas. We have signage throughout our building, and on the floor. We have our bathrooms already. I'm sorry, I'm on a call. Yeah, okay, sorry, somebody came in my room. We have traffic direction arrows, so we've made tremendous progress with that. As far as orientation and registration, we are still in the process of organizing that. We will do a combination of probably remote and maybe possibly some in-person orientation, as we have really decided at this point to only allow our ESL lower level classes to be in person. So our goal with that is to equip our students with basic technology, some Zoom, some Remind, as that is what our teachers have really been focusing on as far as delivering online content and lessons, and getting them used to using a computer and then transitioning them online. Our plan for right now is to have morning classes about 5, 2 in the afternoon, and 6 in the evening. We're looking at staggering release times and start times to reduce student interaction. We do have some, again, some teacher expectations of 30% of your teaching time will be held online, maybe through a Zoom class. We will have, in the classroom, we'll have 14 to 12 students. So we're still fleshing all of this out. The rest of our classes, our CTE, high school diploma, and GED will be online, except for one CTE class that will come in and do some, do a lab in our class. So we're proud to say in the process of purchasing and distributing technology to our students who need it. We're still trying to do that, figuring out who needs it, hotspots and laptops. Our GED testing center will be up and ready to go as soon as the plexiglass is available. And we're still working on developing teacher expectations. Again, this is a fluid process and challenging. But lastly, we've decided to push our start date from the 17th of August to the 24th to allow our teachers some time for training, for PD, just to reacclimate to this new environment. We just really want to support our teachers. And if that has to move again, that might move again. We just want to make sure that we're ready to go when the time comes. And if that means we have to start later, we just have to start later. I think I've covered everything at this point. If anyone has any questions.
So if you could take the slide off, so yes, any board members, questions or comments? Well, I'll ask you're okay, Greg, and I have no idea, Linda. So I'll ask a question. So basically, if I understood it, you have the low-level ELD or whatever, the entry ELD, whatever the right language is. You feel it has to be done in person. It just doesn't work.
Right, it's really tough to reach that population. They usually have no technology access or little to no technology access, and they're so limited with their own academic skills that it's very difficult to teach that level online, how to use Zoom, many of them don't even know how to set up a password. So we're actually looking at some ESL digital literacy content, and maybe doing an IBEST model where we can maybe use our computer labs and the computer instructor with an ESL teacher together. We're just looking at different options and just, again, getting them equipped with the basic knowledge so they can be online if we all are online again.
Yes. What percentage are you going to be using all your classrooms in August, September, do you feel?
So no, we'll probably be looking at about 60 students on campus at a time. So for example, in the morning, if we have 5 classes, that's on average 12 students per class, and we'll stagger, we'll separate them. We have, fortunately, many classrooms. So we will have some space, and we have 2 campus entrances. So we will also have health check stations set up at both ends of the campus. That's an important thing I forgot to say. And students will have to be checked before entering a classroom, but that will be done at the campus entrances, as well as teachers. That's one of our other plans.
You're bringing 60 people on at each at 9, I forgot the times, 9, 2, and 7 or whatever it is.
Right, so on average, 12 students per class. We'll have 5 in the morning, 2 in the afternoon, and then 6 in the evening.
Got it. Any other questions? Thank you very much. Very good first presentation.
Thank you.
Good job.
Thanks.
So
thank you all.
For Peninsula, if you could put that up there. And is Ron Campagna here? I can't find him.
Okay, I don't think so. So I think I can walk us through. It's fairly straightforward. This is, they've got a different daily schedule based on some issues associated with transportation. This is the transportation piece. In terms of the conversations we've had to date, our focus in terms of transportation has been special ed students, Peninsula High School students, and then anything besides that would be Foster City areas. This schedule has every Friday as a remote day with all 7 classes. There was a belief that if we do go back to full 100%, that this would be that having experience doing remote learning would be really important for this group. This is, as you know, a group that has remote learning is more challenging. All the data suggests that online synchronous or online asynchronous is much more difficult. So our thought is to offer students the chance to come up on the Hill and do this work. This would be through October. As you know, the world at Peninsula, the new building will be set. So there would be the possibility of moving to their new location. If you'll notice here, there's a schedule here. for when school is, if it's remote, and then another if there is some on-site time. The remote moves school back to an 8:40 or 9 o'clock start. But if students are on campus, then the buses need to roll earlier. You've got a schedule here. The next slide. In terms of the phase committee that would look at it, this includes site folks, principals, or teachers are heavily involved in the discussion here. They'll meet every Thursday to talk about how things are going and what to do. Their phases are a little bit different than we might see on other groups. And also we want to look at what's going on with staff, student absences, temperatures, questionnaires, and if we have any COVID-19 cases. We would like to, do the communication on the Monday, the week before, and then this group will also be updating the board as we go forward. So you'll see here that all this is dependent upon what goes on, but starting the year with orientation, with on campus in the quad, without teachers needing to be there is the first week, and then students would be on campus and teachers would be working remotely or on at the site, and then you might have some students who would be in the quad going forward. Okay, I think that concludes. I do have a few slides here that are germane to all the discussions that we've had. Do you want me to go over those now, Mr. Friedman, or do you want me to wait?
I have questions about and someone found Mr. Campaign.
We can't hear you.
Someone found Ron, but I still can't see his picture there. But I have questions about, oh, there he is, about how this is going to work, and maybe other board members too, about Peninsula. I'll let other board members go first. Anyone have questions? I'm really concerned about, we're going to transport them up to do work, between mid-August and basically October 1st. We're going to transport them from San Mateo, basically all the way up to Crestmore, to not interact with teachers, but to have a place where they do work. Is that what I'm hearing? Ron, or you can unmute yourself.
So yes, so basically the premise is not that, to be clear, students are not required to come up to the site during this time, and they're giving that as an option. And part of it is also too, if we do come back into an on-site version for those who wish, that they're going to have to get used to a similar schedule when the bus is available. But to be clear, no student's going to be required to come up during this time that teachers are remote. We're just giving them that because many of our students face the challenges of working at home. Food is an issue. And so having a space and an outlet, and then similar to the points that were brought up earlier by the board, there, for staff that is comfortable working with students, they would be potentially accessible to the students. And we've marked out spaces where students can be socially distanced and provided the proper support.
I guess my thought is, we're pretty much committing here not to going forward with, sticking to online learning probably through the end of September. And my understanding is October 1st, the new facility is going to be ready. Hasn't changed. I know the buildings have been delivered already because I've seen them. And so, they should be ready October 1st or sooner. Are we better off trying to find that workspace for them closer to where they live, either in the adult school area there somewhere, or maybe Burlingame High, see if we can share space? I understand we only have about 100 kids total. I think trying to move the kids, get those 100 kids, the vast majority who live in San Mateo, offering the opportunity to ride a bus for whatever it takes up to Crestmore for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, or whatever it is, just is, it's easier for us to say it because that's where people are comfortable, but the kids aren't going to be able to do it. They're not going to want to do it. If we really want them to get that support, we're better off doing it closer to where they are. And can we look at trying to find that sort of learning center in some of our other spaces closer to where they live?
So Ms. McManus, can you comment on the availability of the campus in October?
Yes, we believe that it's going to be completed in October. To what date, we're not sure at this point because as you know, they are stacking all the portables over by the adult school, and then they are actually stacking them on top of each other over on Hinckley. So it's kind of exciting to see the campus come to light, but we're not sure of the completion date. And, all along with Ron and the construction team, we have really talked about when is a logical time for his opening to occur that's, that makes a good sense for his program. And we came down to, I think it was the first week in November, Ron,
So November 9th would be the transition. We'd come over at the end of trimester 1. And part of that was the decision is we wanted it to be clean and also just the familiarity our students have with our campus.
Right. And we have a lot of, so in the interim, Ron has, I think, done a really good job putting together a plan up at Crestmore. And I think that, moving twice or having the staff, the teachers will be on site and having all their resources in the same place that they've known for the last couple of years, probably from a teaching standpoint is better than to move them twice and put them somewhere else. I do agree with you, Mark, in the sense that it is a long haul from, San Mateo or Foster City in a bus up to Crestmore. I mean, it is challenging. It's a long drive. The good news is with COVID-19, there's less traffic on the road, so it makes the commute a little bit better.
Yeah, I just feel you're going to be lucky to get 20 kids up there. I mean, it's like you've put together this plan with all this support, and because you're dealing it so far away from where the kids live and all this issue with COVID-19 and making it not mandatory to come, which is appropriate, no one's going to come. I mean, so, it's just sort of, in life, you go to where the customers are, and the only reason they're coming now is because they had to.
Yeah, and if there was an ideal location for 9 weeks or 12 weeks to do this, we would have done that, but I just don't see that, Mr. Friedman. Burlingame is going to be, whatever outside learning spaces they have, they're going to want to claim.
Well, I would hope maybe I would suggest we look, because I think that it's going to be it's going to not be an effective first semester or first trimester, because most of those students are just going to not show up, and not get the support they need because they're just going to work at home and not do much, because they're not going to want to ride the bus to school, given it's an optional ride.
Well, we'll take another look at this and report back.
That's just my opinion. I don't know what the rest of the board thinks.
I was just going to say real quick that, we'll have to see, because I think more students do value coming to this campus. And they recognize it as a space. We did put out a survey looking at the adult school a couple months ago, and the students that we were able to poll and the families as well as the staff, the majority did not want to move twice within a year. And so I think that was a factor. As far as, potentially moving earlier, we could, but I do think it creates a challenge if you have an uncertainty in a date that's prior to the beginning of trimester 2.
Any other board members wish to comment? I've had my piece.
I'm good.
Okay. Linda, anything? Linda, are you there?
Yes, I just didn't have anything to say. I
Okay.
know that's shocking.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so this item's done. Now, if you wanted to wrap up, Dr. Skelly.
Okay,
Yeah,
so if you could get the slides back up. So we've talked a little bit, and your comments have been helpful here in terms of some of the items that we want to bring back on the to the July 30th meeting. We need to continue to refine and disseminate the safety plan. We've done some good work on that, but there's more work to do. Obviously, there's logistical challenges that we have here. What the survey results are really important. The slide, oh, I'm sorry, I'm on the next slide. Sorry, and then I'll go back to that one. We have work to do on the master schedule. We need to address staff challenges with regard to return to work. Those include health conditions and daycare. And we need to continue to develop the outdoor spaces, learning spaces, and the community points of entry. And I know that there's a lot of really good work that's happened on that. One of the comments that I think I need from the board is, we have some possibilities here, including the ones that I mentioned, as well as other teachers, where students may need to come and go during the day and some sort of open campus thought. That hasn't been something that's traditionally happened in this district. We've obviously let kids go if they don't have a first period class or don't have a seventh period class. But I can see students in physical education, for example, who would live around the corner and would come on campus and not. And we can provide, or at least I think we can provide ins and outs for those students, but that's a departure from the way schools have operated. And I think we're going to need some staff members to do different things than they have in the past. For example, if we don't have students in buildings, we have SPOEs who we don't need to have clean campuses, and or not as many. So redeploying those folks, the instructional aides, even bus drivers, we may not need as much. So looking at those pieces are things that we need to do in the next month. So that's the end of my comments.
Go back to the board, please, who's ever controlling. Thank you. So does the board have any final comments or anything they want to add? Possibly directions? I mean, you've already given a lot of directions for 2 weeks from now. Anything else? Any new directions you'd like to give?
So just to kind of finalize. Going back.
Oh,
Sorry.
Correct, Linda, then
In
Bob.
order.
okay.
We'll go in order.
Okay.
Correct.
So just to kind of summarize, I think we're headed in the right direction. I like how mentioning particular points. I mean, Mr. Bierman brought up the grade issue and what we're doing in that, and I'm more than willing to say let's move forward with that. I think overall the plan is good, and I think we given direction into where to fill it out. So I think that's the direction I think we're going in, and that's what I'd like to see.
Thank you. Ms. Linda.
Okay, I've got two things. One, campus security, how we are going to maintain a safe environment for everyone. I think that's something I really want to hear more about. And I know Dr. Scully was talking about deploying people in other ways, and that may be the other ways. But there's going to have to be training involved in that also, because we want to do that in a way that makes sense. And then I do want to hear from the principals. I'd love to have them make comments next time so that we could hear them. I would really like to hear their perspective.
I'll make sure we schedule them accordingly. This time we scheduled around, the adult school, the middle college, and the peninsula. Okay. Who's next? Mr. Hanley.
I don't really have anything more to add right now.
Mr. Griffin, Bob? Nothing?
No, you know, the thing that I think it's, hopefully none of us lose the fact that we're all trying to make the process better. And I know, you know, you can feel everybody, you know, staff or board members, everybody can feel pretty beat down. But I think in the end, as long as we're inching closer toward a solution, you know, we'll get over that the fatigue and the letdown that we're all feeling. So we just got to keep it up. And my hat's off to the superintendent.
I'd second what Bob says, and just
Second.
Regarding, I think, transportation and open campuses, we need to really look at that, you know, to the extent people are going far to places like the Peninsula, like from Foster City, where they're just coming for a little bit. How are we going to handle that? It's not so much, we can easily say they can come and go and have a check-in, check-out process. That's easier. But when they're relying on us for transportation, it's not so easy. So I'd like to hear, you know, it's how we're gonna, if they can come and go, how we're gonna help facilitate that for those who don't live near the campus. And the second thing I just say is, you know, you did a good job talking about communication. Just another follow-up on all the communication efforts. I think we all, you know, create, you know, I think we saw at this board meeting, when you use a second language, it doubles your investment in communication. You know, it took us twice as long to move through that. So, you know, we have to understand there's more investment in that. And we have to, and I'd like to just see follow up on all our communication efforts.
Just to echo on that, and it's not just by email that we have to use snail mail, we have to use phone calls, we have to use other resources. And I know Dr. Skilling mentioned that, I just want to reiterate it.
Yes, we just can't assume that everyone has email. Great point. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next item. So the next item is, I'm sorry here, guys. The next item is N1, approval of personnel actions.
Yes, we have just the personnel actions today, and then one recognition. Gregory Ciliato, the instructional aide at Burlingame High School, has submitted his retirement after 13 years in the district, effective August 13th.
That's good. Do I hear a motion?
I make a motion to approve the.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Land, seconded by Ms. Lees Dwyer. Mr. Land, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Lees Dwyer.
Yes.
Mr. Hanley.
Yes.
Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
I vote yes. Motion carries 5-0. Next item, and I was trying to help me here, Ms. Chalkley. It's R1, review, discuss, approve the specific COVID-19 board policy. We had someone who wishes to speak, and I can't find them.
Yes, that was Marina Van Blumenstein, and I did promote her, but let me see. It looks like she's maybe fallen out of the queue. Let me see if I can find her again, if you don't mind.
I was looking and I can't find her. You know, raise your hand, I guess, if you're in the attendees, and then you go to the top.
Or you're welcome to email me at comments@smushed.org. But I do not, you're right, I do not see her in the attendee list.
Okay, who's presenting this item? Dr. Black.
Yes, this is a policy from CSBA that provides districts with COVID-19 protocols and procedures that will supersede some policies as necessary. The bullets are pretty explanatory that are on the agenda. I think it's a 12-page document altogether. I didn't see anything controversial in it, but I know we've pulled it and brought it back, so it's here for approval.
Board members, anyone want to make a comment? Linda, just because we can't see you, do you have anything you want to add?
I just want to make,
Oops, no, thank you.
sorry, I just wanted to make sure that, So everything that we've kind of gone with is going to be in sync with what we're doing and what we're planning.
Sorry, Greg. Nothing in the policy is out of sync from what we are planning.
Okay.
Yeah, and it provides permission to like for the grading and that sort of stuff, if we need to do it, that can supersede some of our policies, but only with board action. It doesn't do it itself. You know, this policy doesn't do it itself.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Mr. Hanley or Mr. Griffin, any comments?
No, it looked fine to me when I read through it. It looked like it was in sync with, you know, what I understood needed to be done and with what we were already doing.
Okay, motion to approve.
Mr. Land made a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Mr. Griffin made the second first. Motion by Mr. Land, second by Mr. Griffin. Mr. Land, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Lee Dwyer?
Yes.
Mr. Griffin? Mr.
Yes.
Hanley. Mr. Hanley, sorry. Yes for Mr. Hanley, Mr. Griffin.
Yes.
Bob? And I vote yes. Motion carries 5-0. My apologies for going out of order. And we're down to the last item, which is when we're going to have the next meeting. I think we decided we wanted to have a late afternoon, early evening meeting, like on July 29th, 6 p.m. This meeting took 3 hours, okay?
I really would like
Took
to,
4.
I would really like to
Not counting
do a 5 o'clock.
5 o'clock. What do you think, Linda? I mean, I'm talking open session. Whenever we do closed session, open session, closed session goes at least an hour early.
I think 5 o'clock is much more reasonable than what we did today.
I agree.
Do 5 or 6, which would you just?
I'm open.
That's fine.
I'm
5.
open.
Who said 5's fine?
5.
Greg. Linda, are you okay with 5?
Yes.
So Kevin, can we do the 29th or do we want to do the 28th?
I'd rather do the 29th. And yes, 5 o'clock is, will we do closed session at 4 and open at 5?
Yeah. Yes, I think we're always better doing closed session first. We will have had, right, the 2-on-2 meeting with San Bruno. So there will be at least one item to report back on closed session, because I believe it's Mr. Land and I's opinion every time after a 2-on-2, we want to report back to the rest of the board.
Agreed.
Agreed? Okay. So, and as the rest of the board wants to have that feedback? Yes.
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 Yes. Donna.
Okay. So that's good. So we'll do that and we'll start at 4 closed session, 5 open session. Well, by the way, just we're done really. So Mr. Grip, Bob, we had, while we said 500, we had we had another 150 on YouTube.
You know what we could do, Mark?
What?
In order to make it more accessible to people, the 5 o'clock meeting, you put the return to school at the end of the agenda versus the beginning, because that way we can get rid of all the preliminaries, all the other stuff. And then that's all we'll have to deal with. I mean, that would be my idea.
That's fair.
That opens.
Yes, and then we could,
Yeah.
then we could do like the last thing, you know, we'll set it up where the school principals report and so forth. So that will be later than 5. That will be like at 6:30.
Yeah, because that way we get rid of the personnel and all, all the other contracts.
Yeah, I'm not so sure we're going to have a lot of that because this is not a regularly planned meeting.
Well, but you don't know, so.
We'll
anyway,
probably have
that's my thought.
contracts. We always have contracts.
Yeah.
So, okay. Dr. Skelly, you hear that?
Yes.
I think it's a great idea.
Are we good?
Okay, I'm adjourning the meeting.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. I can
Bye.
sign off or I can sign you off.